Rain fell softly on the streets of London as Alex Rodriguez walked slowly toward Buckingham Palace. He looked like any other tourist with his camera hanging around his neck and a backpack full of what seemed like normal travel items. But Alex was far from being a regular visitor to the famous royal residence. 6 months ago, Alex had been one of Britain's most trusted intelligence officers. He worked for MI6, the secret service that protects the country from threats. For 12 years, he had served his nation without question, believing he was doing the right thing. That all changed when he discovered something that shook him to his core. It started with a routine mission. Alex was supposed to check some computer files in a government building. What he found there made his blood run cold. The government was secretly watching its own people. They were reading private messages, listening to phone calls, and tracking movements of ordinary citizens who had done nothing wrong. Even worse, they were using the royal palaces as hiding spots for their illegal activities. Alex tried to report what he found to his bosses. They told him to forget about it and threatened his job if he spoke up. When he refused to stay quiet, they labeled him a traitor and put him on the most wanted list. Now, half a year later, he was a fugitive running from the very people he once worked alongside. The documents Alex had stolen were hidden in his camera equipment. These papers could prove everything: the illegal spying, the misuse of royal property, and the cover-up that went all the way to the top. But he needed to get them to the right people, and that meant taking a huge risk. As Alex approached the palace gates, he remembered his training. Stay calm, blend in, think 3 steps ahead. The palace was one of the most protected buildings in the world, but Alex knew its secrets. During his time with MI6, he had studied every inch of the building, memorized its hidden passages, and learned about its security systems. The morning crowd was perfect for his plan. Hundreds of tourists gathered to watch the famous changing of the guard ceremony. Families with children, elderly couples, and groups of friends all pressed together, trying to get the best view. Alex mixed in with them, just another face in the crowd. He pulled out his phone and pretended to take pictures while actually scanning the area for security cameras and guard positions. The red uniformed guards stood perfectly still, but Alex knew they were trained soldiers underneath those fancy uniforms. Around the edges of the crowd, he spotted plainclothes police officers trying to blend in. They looked relaxed, but their eyes constantly moved, watching for any sign of trouble. What the officers didn't know was that Alex had been watching them for weeks. He knew their routines, their shift changes, and their weak spots. Every morning at exactly 11:45, there was a 2-minute window when the north side entrance was less guarded. That was his chance. Alex checked his watch. 11:30, 15 minutes to go. His heart was beating fast, but his hands stayed steady. This wasn't about revenge or money. This was about the truth. The British people deserved to know what their government was really doing in their name. A group of school children pushed past him, excited to see the palace. Their teacher was trying to keep them together while explaining the history of the royal family. Alex smiled sadly, thinking about how these kids trusted that their government would protect them, not spy on them. Behind him, a woman was talking loudly on her phone about her vacation plans. Next to her, an elderly man was reading a newspaper and complaining about politics. These were the people whose privacy was being violated every day, and they had no idea. Alex moved closer to the palace fence, studying the guards more carefully. He recognized one of them, a young man who couldn't be more than 25 years old. The guard stood perfectly straight, his red uniform bright against the gray sky. His rifle was ceremonial, but Alex knew there were real weapons nearby. The guard's name tag read Thompson. He looked nervous, probably new to this job. Alex felt bad about what he was going to have to do, but there was no other way. Sometimes good people had to make hard choices to stop bad things from happening. A police officer walked by, speaking quietly into his radio. Alex turned away and pretended to read a tourist brochure. The officer didn't give him a second look. After months of changing his appearance and staying hidden, Alex had become an expert at being invisible. 40. 5 minutes left. Alex moved toward the north entrance, staying with a group of tourists who were heading that way. His backpack felt heavier now, weighed down not just by his equipment but by the importance of what he was about to do. The rain was getting heavier and some tourists were starting to leave. Perfect. Fewer witnesses meant fewer complications. Alex pulled up his hood and walked faster, timing his movement with the guard rotation he had memorized. As he got closer to the entrance, Alex thought about Detective Inspector Kate Williams from Scotland Yard's counter-terrorism unit. She had been hunting him for months, getting closer each time. Williams was smart and dedicated, the kind of officer Alex had once been proud to work alongside. Now she was his biggest threat. Alex had seen Williams in the area earlier that morning, talking to other officers near the main gate. She knew he was planning something, but she didn't know what or when. That gave him a small advantage, but not much time. 43. 2 minutes. Alex's training kicked in, and his mind became completely focused. Everything around him seemed to slow down. The sounds of the crowd faded into the background. His breathing became steady and controlled. He thought about his old life, his old friends, his old beliefs. All of that was gone now. The only thing that mattered was getting those documents to the world. The British people had a right to know the truth, even if it meant destroying his own life to tell them. The guard named Thompson shifted slightly, checking his watch. Alex knew what that meant. The shift change was coming. In less than 2 minutes, Thompson would be alone at his post for exactly 90 seconds, while the other guards moved to their new positions. Alex reached into his backpack and felt for the modified weapon hidden inside. He hated that it had come to this, but the government had left him no choice. When peaceful methods failed, sometimes people had to take extreme actions to protect freedom and democracy. Pretty forward. 1 minute. Alex moved into position, his heart pounding, but his mind clear. Everything he had learned in 12 years of service had led to this moment. In 60 seconds, he would either succeed in exposing the truth or fail and probably die trying. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean. Soon, Alex hoped, it would wash away the corruption that had infected his government. But first, he had to get past the guard into the palace and down to the basement where the real secrets were hidden. 45. Time to move. At exactly 11:47 a.m., Alex made his move. The crowd was thick around the main ceremony, but the north entrance was quieter, just as he had planned. Guard Thompson stood alone at his post, his young face serious under his tall black hat. Alex walked, up slowly, keeping his hands visible but ready. When he was close enough to speak without shouting, he stopped and looked directly at the guard. "Soldier," Alex said quietly, using the tone of authority he had learned in his military days. "I need you to listen very carefully." Thompson's eyes moved to Alex's face, but he didn't turn his head. His training told him to stay still and alert the other guards if there was trouble. But something in Alex's voice made him hesitate. "I'm going to reach into my jacket now," Alex continued, moving very slowly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone, but I need your help with something important." The young guard's eyes widened as Alex pulled out what looked like a normal camera, but was actually his modified weapon. It wasn't designed to kill, but it would definitely get Thompson's attention. "Listen to me carefully," Alex said, stepping closer. "My name is Alex Rodriguez. I used to work for MI6. Right now I'm wanted by every police officer in London, but I'm not a criminal. I'm trying to stop a crime that's been happening right under everyone's nose." Thompson's training told him to call for backup, but Alex was standing too close now. The guard could see that Alex's hands were steady and his eyes were calm. This wasn't some crazy person making wild threats. This was a professional who knew exactly what he was doing. "What do you want?" Thompson whispered, barely moving his lips. "I need to get into the palace," Alex replied. "There's something in the basement that the British people need to see. Evidence of illegal spying that's been going on for years." "I can't just let you in," Thompson said, sweat starting to form on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Even if I wanted to help you, there are cameras everywhere. The moment I move, every security officer in the building will know something's wrong. Alex nodded. I know. But I also know that you took an oath to protect the British people, not to help the government spy on them. What I'm about to show you will prove that your own commanders have been lying to you. Very carefully, Alex pulled out a small device from his pocket. On its screen were photographs of official documents, stamped with government seals and marked, Top Secret. These are real, Alex said, tilting the screen so Thompson could see. Operation Nightfall, a program that uses this very building to illegally monitor British citizens. Your royal family doesn't even know their home is being used as a spy center. Thompson's eyes moved quickly over the documents. Even in the few seconds he could see them, the official letterheads and signatures looked genuine. His stomach turned as he realized what Alex was showing him. This can't be true, Thompson whispered. It is, Alex said firmly. And if I don't get this evidence to the right people today, it's going to disappear forever. They already know I'm here. Detective Inspector Williams has been tracking me for months. In a few minutes, this place is going to be crawling with armed police. As if summoned by his words, Alex's trained ear picked up the sound of radio chatter from somewhere behind the palace walls. Time was running out faster than he had hoped. I'm going to put this away now, Alex said, sliding the device back into his pocket. And you're going to escort me through the north entrance like I'm an authorized visitor. If anyone asks, tell them I'm a security consultant here to check the basement communication systems. They'll never believe that, Thompson protested. They will if you're confident enough, Alex replied. You're a guard at Buckingham Palace. People expect you to know who belongs here and who doesn't. Act like I'm supposed to be here, and most people won't question it. Thompson looked around nervously. The ceremony was still going on, and most attention was focused on the main courtyard. But security cameras were recording everything, and it would only be minutes before someone noticed something unusual. If I help you, Thompson said slowly, and you're lying about all this, I'll lose my job and probably go to prison. If you don't help me, Alex replied, and I'm telling the truth, then you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you had a chance to stop the government from spying on innocent people, and you chose to look the other way. The young guard was quiet for a long moment, thinking about his oath, his duty, and his conscience. In his training, they had taught him to follow orders and trust his superiors. But they had also taught him that a soldier's highest duty was to protect the people of his country. How do I know you won't hurt anyone once we're inside? Thompson asked. Alex looked him straight in the eye. Because 12 years ago, I took the same oath you did, to protect and serve the British people. I've never broken that oath, even when my own government turned against me. In the distance, both men could hear the sound of vehicles approaching quickly. Alex knew that Detective Inspector Williams had probably figured out his plan and was already coordinating a response. We need to move now, Alex said urgently. In 2 minutes, this place is going to be surrounded. Thompson took a deep breath and made his decision. Follow me, he said quietly, and pray to God you're telling the truth about all this. The two men walked quickly toward the north entrance. Thompson used his access card to open the heavy wooden door, and they stepped inside together. The palace corridors were dimly lit and quiet, a stark contrast to the noise and activity outside. The basement entrance is this way, Thompson said, leading Alex down a hallway lined with portraits of past royal family members. As they walked, Alex could hear the sound of radio chatter getting louder. Security officers were definitely moving through the building, probably searching for him already. There's something else you should know, Alex said as they turned a corner. The communication equipment in the basement isn't just being used to spy on regular people, it's also being used to monitor foreign diplomats and allies. Britain is breaking international law every single day. Thompson's face went pale. That would be an act of war if anyone found out. Exactly, Alex replied. That's why they're so desperate to stop me. This isn't just about domestic spying anymore. This could destroy Britain's relationships with every ally we have. They reached a service elevator that would take them down to the basement levels. Thompson pressed the button, and they waited. Intense silence for the doors to open. One more thing, Alex said as the elevator arrived. When this is all over, tell Detective Inspector Williams that I never wanted it to come to this. Tell her I tried to do it the right way first, but no one would listen. The elevator doors opened and both men stepped inside. As they descended into the basement of Buckingham Palace, Alex knew there was no turning back. In a few minutes, he would either expose the biggest government scandal in British history, or he would be captured and the truth would be buried forever. Above them, the sound of running footsteps echoed through the palace corridors as armed police officers began their search. The elevator descended slowly into the basement of Buckingham Palace, its old machinery creaking with each floor they passed. Alex watched the numbers change. Ground floor, sub-level 1, sub-level 2. Finally, they reached sub-level 3, the deepest part of the palace that most people never knew existed. "I've never been down this far before," Thompson admitted as the doors opened. "I didn't even know there was a sub-level 3. "Most people don't," Alex replied, stepping out into a narrow corridor lined with pipes and electrical cables. This part of the palace was built during World War II as a bomb shelter. After the war, the government decided it was the perfect place to hide things they didn't want anyone to find. The basement was much different from the beautiful rooms upstairs. Here, the walls were plain concrete, and the only light came from harsh fluorescent bulbs hanging from the ceiling. The air smelled musty and old, like a place that hadn't seen natural sunlight in decades. Alex led the way down the corridor, his memory guiding him through the maze of tunnels. During his time with MI6, he had spent weeks studying the blueprints of this building. Every turn, every door, every hidden passage was mapped out in his mind. "How do you know where you're going?" Thompson asked, following close behind. "I used to work here sometimes," Alex explained. "Not in the palace itself, but in the government offices connected to it. Most people think Buckingham Palace is just where the royal family lives, but it's also connected to several government buildings through underground tunnels." They passed door after door, each one marked with numbers and codes that meant nothing to Thompson, but told Alex exactly where they were. Storage Room 301, Communication Hub B, Emergency Generator 4. Finally, they reached the door Alex was looking for, Communication Center Alpha. "This is it," Alex said, pulling out a small electronic device from his backpack. "Behind this door is the main server room that handles communications for several government departments. Officially, it's supposed to be used only for royal security. Unofficially, it's the center of Operation Nightfall." Thompson watched as Alex connected his device to the electronic lock on the door. "What's that thing?" "A master key," Alex replied with a grim smile. "One of the few advantages of working for the intelligence service for 12 years. You learn how to get through locked doors." The device beeped softly, and the lock clicked open. Alex pushed the door, and they stepped into a room that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Dozens of computer servers lined the walls, their lights blinking constantly as they processed enormous amounts of data. The room hummed with the sound of cooling fans and electrical equipment. "My God," Thompson whispered, looking around in amazement. "How long has this been here?" "About 5 years," Alex replied, moving toward a bank of computer terminals in the center of the room. "But the operation has been growing bigger every year. What started as a small program to monitor terrorist threats has become a massive spy network watching everyone." Alex sat down at one of the terminals and began typing rapidly. His fingers moved across the keyboard like a pianist playing a familiar song. Screen after screen of data flashed by, too fast for Thompson to read. "What are you looking for?" Thompson asked. "Proof," Alex replied, not taking his eyes off the screen. "The documents I stole 6 months ago showed that Operation Nightfall exists, but I need to access the current data to prove it's still active. I need to show exactly who's being watched and why." As Alex worked, Thompson wandered around the room looking at the servers and equipment. Each machine was labeled with codes and numbers, but one label caught his attention. Royal Household Communications, authorized personnel only. "Alex," Thompson said slowly, "some of this equipment is labeled for royal communications. Are they spying on the royal family too?" Alex stopped typing and turned to look at Thompson. "That's the worst part of all this. The royal family has no idea that their own home is being used as a spy center. Every phone call, every email, every text message that goes in or out of this building is being recorded and analyzed. Thompson felt sick to his stomach. As a member of the Queen's Guard, he had sworn an oath to protect the royal family. The idea that his own government was violating their privacy was almost too horrible to believe. But why? Thompson asked. Why would they spy on their own monarchy? Control, Alex replied simply. Information is power. If you know what someone is planning, who they're meeting with, what they're thinking, then you can influence their decisions. The royal family thinks they're making independent choices, but really, they're being manipulated by people who have access to all their private conversations. Alex turned back to the computer and continued his work. The screen showed lists of names, phone numbers, and email addresses. Thousands and thousands of British citizens were being monitored without their knowledge or consent. Look at this, Alex said, pointing to one section of the screen. Teachers, doctors, lawyers, journalists, all having their communications recorded. And here, politicians from opposition parties, judges, even police officers who ask too many questions about government activities. Thompson read over Alex's shoulder, and what he saw made his blood run cold. His own name was on the list. His phone number, his email address, even his home address were all there in the government database. They're watching me too, Thompson said in shock. They're watching everyone, Alex replied. That's the point. Create a system so big and so complete that no one can oppose the government without them knowing about it in advance. Suddenly, both men heard the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy boots moving quickly and purposefully. The search teams had found them. How much more time do you need? Thompson asked urgently. Just a few more minutes, Alex replied, typing even faster. I need to copy the current surveillance logs and the list of targets. Without this information, the documents I stole 6 months ago are just old news. The footsteps were getting closer. Thompson could hear voices now, low and professional. These weren't regular police officers. They were special forces, probably the same kind of elite soldiers Alex used to work with. There, Alex said finally, ejecting a small USB drive from the computer. I've got everything we need. Current. Surveillance operations, target lists, budgets, everything. This will prove that Operation Nightfall is real and it's happening right now. Thompson looked at the tiny device in Alex's hand. Something so small could bring down the government and change the course of British history forever. What happens now? Thompson asked. Now I have to get this information to people who can use it, Alex replied, putting the USB drive in his pocket. Journalists, members of parliament, maybe even international courts, someone who can't be intimidated or bought off. The voices in the corridor were very close now. Thompson could make out individual words. Basement, communication center, armed and dangerous. They think you're going to hurt someone, Thompson realized. They want people to think that, Alex replied. It's easier to justify hunting me down if they can convince everyone I'm a terrorist instead of a whistleblower. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Both men held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Alex Rodriguez, a woman's voice called through the door. This is Detective Inspector Williams. I know you're in there. I also know you have Guardsman Thompson with you. Let's talk about this before anyone gets hurt. Alex smiled grimly. Right on time. I always said Williams was the best detective on the force. Are you going to surrender? Thompson asked. Not yet, Alex replied, moving toward a different door at the back of the room. I've still got one more card to play. But first I need to make sure this information gets out even if I don't. Alex pulled the USB drive from his pocket and handed it to Thompson. If something happens to me, I need you to get this to Detective Inspector Williams. Tell her that everything I've told you is true, and that this drive contains the proof. Thompson took the device, his hand shaking slightly. What are you going to do? Create a distraction, Alex replied, reaching into his backpack for another device, and hopefully, find another way out of here. Outside the door, Detective Inspector Williams continued trying to negotiate. Alex, I know you believe you're doing the right thing. I know you think the government has betrayed you, but this isn't the way to fix it. Come out, and we can discuss this properly." Alex looked at Thompson one last time. "Remember your oath, soldier. Protect the British people no matter what the cost." Then he pressed a button on his device and everything changed. The device Alex pressed wasn't a weapon. It was something much more sophisticated. Within seconds, every computer screen in the room began displaying the same message in large, bold letters. Operation Nightfall. Classified documents. British citizens under illegal surveillance. The server started automatically copying and transmitting files to locations around the world. News organizations, human rights groups, and government oversight committees in different countries were all receiving the same shocking information at the same time. "What did you just do?" Thompson asked, staring at the screens in amazement. "Insurance," Alex replied calmly. "If they capture me now, it won't matter. The truth is already spreading faster than they can stop it." Outside the door, Detective Inspector Williams was talking urgently into her radio. Alex could hear fragments of her conversation. "Data transmission. Stop the upload. Cut the internet connection." But it was too late. The information was already out there. "Alex," Williams called through the door again. "I don't know what you're doing in there, but you need to stop it now. This is bigger than just you and your grievances against the government." "She's right about that," Alex said to Thompson. "This is about every British citizen who believes they live in a free country. This is about democracy itself." Thompson was reading the information scrolling across the screens, and what he saw made him feel sick and angry at the same time. Lists of innocent people being watched. Records of private conversations. Photos taken without permission. Government officials discussing how to use the stolen information to control elections and silence critics. "This is horrible," Thompson said quietly. "How could they do this to their own people?" "Because they stopped seeing us as people," Alex replied. "To them, we're all just potential threats to be monitored and controlled. They've forgotten that the government is supposed to serve the citizens, not spy on them." The door handle rattled as someone tried to open it from the outside. Williams had probably brought lock-picking equipment, but the door was reinforced and would take them several minutes to get through. "I need to show you something else," Alex said, pulling out his tablet again. "The worst part of Operation Nightfall isn't the domestic spying. Look at this." He showed Thompson files labeled International Surveillance and Allied Communications Intercept. The documents revealed that Britain was also secretly monitoring the private communications of friendly foreign governments, including close allies like France, Germany, and Canada. "We're spying on our own allies?" Thompson asked in disbelief. "Every phone call between foreign leaders, every diplomatic email, every private meeting, all of it recorded and analyzed," Alex confirmed. "Britain has been breaking international law for years, violating the sovereignty of friendly nations and betraying the trust of our closest partners." Thompson thought about his military training, about the oath he had taken to defend his country's honor and values. "This isn't defense," he said slowly. "This is betrayal." "Exactly," Alex replied. "And when other countries find out, which they will thanks to what I just transmitted, Britain is going to face the worst diplomatic crisis in our modern history. We might even be expelled from NATO and the European Union." The sound of power. Tools came from outside the door. Williams' team was cutting through the lock and they would be inside within minutes. "There's something else you need to understand," Alex continued. "The people running Operation Nightfall aren't just spying for national security. They're using the information for personal gain. Look at these financial records." The tablet showed bank accounts and investment portfolios belonging to high-ranking government officials. The amounts were staggering. Millions of pounds in accounts that shouldn't exist on a civil servant's salary. "They're selling information to private companies," Alex explained. "Insider knowledge about government contracts, advance warning of policy changes, private details about business competitors. They've turned the intelligence service into their own personal money-making scheme." Thompson stared at the numbers on the screen. "This is treason." "Yes, it is," Alex agreed. "And now you understand why they're so desperate to stop me. I'm not just exposing illegal surveillance. I'm exposing corruption that goes all the way to the top of the government. The cutting sound stopped, and there was a moment of tense silence. Then William's voice came through the door again, but this time she sounded different, less official, more personal. "Alex, I've been listening to what you've been saying in there. I've also been watching the data that's being transmitted from this room. I need you to know that some of us in law enforcement had no idea this was happening." Alex and Thompson looked at each other in surprise. Williams sounded like she was starting to believe Alex's story. "Some of the information you're broadcasting," Williams continued, "it shows that police officers have been under surveillance too. My own phone records, my emails, even my personal bank account. All of it has been monitored without my knowledge or consent." Alex moved closer to the door. "Detective Inspector Williams, I know you're a good officer. I know you believe in justice and the rule of law. That's why I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." "I'm listening," Williams replied. "The people who sent you to hunt me down are the same people who have been spying on you and your family," Alex said. "They used you to chase me because they knew you would do your job professionally, but they never told you the real reason they wanted me stopped." Through the door, Alex could hear Williams talking quietly to her team. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful and troubled. "Alex, if what you're saying is true, then arresting you won't solve anything. The people responsible for this illegal surveillance will just find new ways to hide what they're doing." "That's right," Alex replied. "But if you help me get this information to the right people, honest journalists, clean politicians, international courts, then we can stop this together." Thompson spoke up for the first time. "Detective Inspector Williams, this is Guardsman Thompson. I've seen the evidence, and it's real. The government has been lying to all of us." There was a long pause before Williams responded. "Guardsman Thompson, are you being held against your will?" Thompson looked at Alex, who nodded encouragingly. "No, ma'am," Thompson replied. "I'm here because I chose to help expose the truth. This is bigger than any of us realized." "How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick?" Williams asked. "How do I know you haven't been manipulated or coerced?" Thompson thought about everything he had seen in the past hour: the computer servers, the surveillance lists, the financial records. He thought about his oath to protect the British people and his duty to defend what was right. "Because I've seen my own name on their surveillance list," Thompson replied. "They've been watching me, just like they've been watching you, just like they've been watching everyone." Another long silence. When Williams spoke again, Alex could hear doubt and anger in her voice. "Even if all of this is true," she said, "you've both broken the law. I can't just let you walk away." "I'm not asking you to let me walk away," Alex replied. "I'm asking you to help me finish what I started. Help me make sure this information reaches people who can act on it. Help me protect the British people from their own government." The sound of more footsteps echoed in the corridor. Williams' backup team was arriving, and Alex knew his time was running out. "Detective Inspector," Alex said urgently, "in about 30 seconds, your superiors are going to order you to cut off all communications and arrest everyone in this room. They're going to tell you it's a matter of national security. But the real reason is that they're trying to save themselves from prison." As if summoned by his words, Alex could hear new voices in the corridor. Older, more authoritative voices giving orders about containing the situation and stopping the data transmission. "That's my signal to leave," Alex said to Thompson. "Remember what I told you. Get that USB drive to someone who can use it properly." Thompson nodded, clutching the small device in his hand. "What about you?" Alex smiled sadly. "I've got one more trick up my sleeve. But after this, I'm going to disappear for a very long time." He moved toward a maintenance panel on the far wall and began entering a code. "Tell Detective Inspector Williams that I'm sorry it had to happen this way. Tell her that I hope someday she'll understand that I never wanted to be the enemy." The maintenance panel opened, revealing not pipes or electrical equipment, but the entrance to a narrow tunnel that disappeared into darkness. "How did you know that was there?" Thompson asked in amazement. "Because I helped design the security system for this building," Alex replied. "Every fortress needs a secret way out, even Buckingham Palace." The voices in the corridor were getting louder and more urgent. Someone was shouting orders about sealing all exits and preventing any escape. Alex paused at the tunnel entrance and looked back at Thompson one last time. Remember, soldier, sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is disobey an order from your own government. Then he stepped into the tunnel and vanished into the darkness, leaving Thompson alone with the evidence that would change British history forever. The moment Alex disappeared into the tunnel, he activated the final part of his escape plan. A small device in his backpack sent a signal to the palace's fire suppression system, triggering every alarm in the basement level. Immediately, thick, white chemical foam began spraying from nozzles in the ceiling. The foam was designed to put out electrical fires, but it also created a dense cloud that made it impossible to see more than a few inches in any direction. Emergency sirens wailed throughout the basement as the automatic safety systems activated. Red warning lights flashed and computerized voices announced the fire emergency in multiple languages. The noise was deafening, and the foam continued pouring down like artificial snow. Thompson stood in the communication center holding the USB drive and watching the chaos unfold around him. The computer screens were still broadcasting Alex's evidence to the world, but now they were getting covered with foam. Within minutes, the entire room would be filled with the white chemical cloud. Outside the door, Detective Inspector Williams was shouting orders to her team, but the noise from the alarms made it difficult to hear anything clearly. The cutting equipment they had been using to get through the door was now useless. They couldn't work safely in the chemical fog. "Guardsman Thompson," Williams called through the door. "Are you all right in there?" "I'm fine," Thompson shouted back, though the foam was starting to sting his eyes. "But I can't see anything. The whole room is filling up with fire suppression foam." "We're going to try to get you out," Williams replied. "Stay where you are and keep talking so we can locate you." But Thompson wasn't staying put. Following Alex's example, he moved toward the maintenance panel that had revealed the secret tunnel. The foam was getting thicker, and breathing was becoming difficult, but he managed to find the opening. The tunnel was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for one person to crawl through. Thompson could see a faint light somewhere far ahead, but he couldn't tell how far away it was. He hesitated for a moment, thinking about his duty as a guardsman and his loyalty to his superiors. Then he remembered what he had seen on those computer screens, his own name on a surveillance list, his private life being monitored by people who were supposed to protect him. He thought about the corruption, the illegal spying, and the betrayal of everything he had sworn to defend. Thompson made his decision. He crawled into the tunnel, still holding the USB drive that contained evidence of the biggest government scandal in British history. Behind him, Williams's team finally managed to break through the door of the communication center. They found the room filled with chemical foam and completely empty except for the computer equipment, which was still running despite being covered in white chemicals. "Where is he?" one of the officers shouted over the alarm noise. "Rodriguez is gone," Williams replied, looking around the room with her flashlight. "But where's Guardsman Thompson?" They searched through the foam, checking every corner of the room, but Thompson had vanished just as completely as Alex. It wasn't until 20 minutes later, when the foam finally settled and the alarm stopped, that they discovered the open maintenance panel and the tunnel entrance. "How long has that tunnel been there?" Williams asked the palace security chief, who had arrived to assess the situation. I don't know," the security chief admitted, looking embarrassed. "This is a very old building. There are passages and tunnels that even we don't know about. Some of them date back to World War II, others are even older." Williams stared into the dark tunnel opening. "Where does it lead?" "We'll have to map it to find out," the security chief replied. "But judging by the direction, it probably connects to the underground railway system somewhere near Victoria Station." While the authorities tried to figure out how their prisoners had escaped, Alex was already miles away. The tunnel had led him to an abandoned section of the London Underground that hadn't been used for passenger service in decades. From there, he had made his way to King's Cross Station, where a false passport and a prepaid train ticket were waiting for him in a locker he had rented months earlier. By the time Williams's team discovered the tunnel, Alex was sitting on a high-speed train to Brussels, watching the English countryside disappear behind him. He looked like a completely different person. His hair was now dark brown instead of black, He wore glasses and his clothes made him look like a businessman traveling for work. The train was fast and comfortable, but Alex couldn't relax. Every few minutes he checked his phone to see if the information he had transmitted was reaching the right people. News websites were starting to report on massive data leaks from British intelligence services. Social media was buzzing with speculation about government surveillance programs. But the real breakthrough came 6 hours after Alex had escaped from Buckingham Palace. The BBC interrupted their regular programming with a special news bulletin. "Good evening," the news anchor said, looking directly into the camera with a serious expression. "We have received what appears to be genuine classified documents revealing extensive illegal surveillance operations conducted by the British government against its own citizens and foreign allies." Alex smiled for the first time in months. The truth was finally coming out. Meanwhile, back in London, Thompson had emerged from the tunnel system near Westminster Bridge. He was dirty, tired, and still clutching the USB drive Alex had given him. For several minutes he stood on the bridge looking across the Thames at the Houses of Parliament, thinking about his duty and his conscience. Finally, he made a phone call. "Detective Inspector Williams," he said when she answered. "This is Guardsman Thompson. I need to meet with you privately. I have something you need to see." They met an hour later in a small cafe near the Thames. Williams was out of uniform, looking tired and troubled. Thompson still wore his red guardsman's uniform, though it was now stained with chemical foam and tunnel dirt. "You helped him escape," Williams said. "It wasn't a question." "I helped the truth escape," Thompson replied, placing the USB drive on the table between them. "Everything he told us was real. The surveillance, the corruption, the illegal spying on our allies, all of it." Williams looked at the small device. "Do you know what's on there?" "Proof," Thompson said simply. "Names, dates, financial records, surveillance logs, everything needed to prosecute the people responsible for Operation Nightfall." Williams picked up the USB drive and turned it over in her hands. "If I use this evidence, it will destroy careers and bring down the government. People I've worked with for years will go to prison." "And if you don't use it," Thompson replied, "the spying will continue and democracy in Britain will die a little more each day." Williams was quiet for a long time, thinking about her oath as a police officer and her duty to uphold the law, even when the law had been broken by her own government. "What happened to Rodriguez?" she asked finally. "He disappeared," Thompson said. "I don't know where he went, and I hope I never find out. He sacrificed everything to expose the truth. The least we can do is make sure his sacrifice wasn't wasted." 2 days later, Detective Inspector Williams walked into the offices of the Guardian newspaper and handed the USB drive to their chief investigative reporter. Within a week, the story had spread around the world, and Operation Nightfall became the biggest political scandal in British history. Government ministers resigned in disgrace. Intelligence officials were arrested and charged with treason. Britain's relationships with its allies were severely damaged, and it took years to rebuild trust with other democratic nations. Guardsman Thompson was questioned extensively about his role in the events, but he was never charged with any crime. The inquiry concluded that he had acted according to his conscience and his oath to protect the British people. He left the military 6 months later and became a teacher, never speaking publicly about what had happened in the basement of Buckingham Palace. As for Alex Rodriguez, he was never seen again. There were occasional rumors, a man matching his description spotted in Bangkok, a former intelligence officer living quietly in a small village in Costa Rica, a mysterious figure helping other whistleblowers expose government corruption around the world. But officially, Alex Rodriguez had vanished, as completely as if he had never existed. The man who had risked everything to protect democracy had become a ghost, leaving behind only the truth he had fought so hard to reveal. 5 years later, Thompson received a postcard with no return address. On the front was a picture of a beautiful sunset over a tropical beach. On the back, in handwriting he recognized, were just 4 words: "Democracy is worth it." Thompson smiled and put the postcard in his desk drawer, next to his old guardsman's badge and a newspaper clipping about the fall of Operation Nightfall. Sometimes, he thought to himself, the most important victories are won by people whose names are never remembered by history. The truth had set them all free, even if the price of that freedom had been higher than anyone could have imagined.